Okay, hi guys. Welcome to West London English School. Apologies for the delay. We just had a few problems logging on, but hopefully you're with us. Hopefully it's all good. We're going to be doing listening today, listening part C. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. And let's get straight into it. We've lost a few minutes. Just so you know, my name is Harmi. OET course director here. We're here in West London, and it's a good day as well. The sun is shining. It's a little bit cold. I hope you're well wherever you are in the world, and if you're preparing for the OET exam, I hope your preparation is going well. With listening, I hope this lesson can help you. Listening part C, it's probably one of the most challenging parts of the OET exam. As is reading part C. In fact, the whole exam is a challenging exam. And hopefully, like I say, this lesson will be able to help you. With listening part C, I'm sure a lot of you know that you're listening to two long extracts. These are healthcare topics. Everyone does the same paper, whether you're a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, an optometrist. You're all doing the same reading and listening papers. It's going to be about healthcare and what you're tested on, identifying the speaker's opinion, attitude, and the questions are generally detail and gist as well. We're going to be kind of looking at this throughout this lesson today. So you've got two long extracts. You have either a presentation, which is one person speaking. These are normally a little bit trickier because it is like a monologue. It is only one person speaking, and you've got to follow the listening down. So when it goes to the next question, you've got to be really sharp. You kind of got to be following it. And it's a little bit different from an interview because that's a little bit easier to follow. You know when it's moved on to the next question, as you have an interview and it's two people speaking. So that's really just a quick overview of listening part C. You have presentations, you have interviews. This is what you see on test day. You'll see something like this. You can see at the top, it gives you a little bit of context. Always important to read this bit of context. It will tell you who you're listening to, and it will tell you if it's a presentation or an interview. So don't be too quick to go through the questions. Make sure you know who you're listening to and what they're talking about. And then you've got questions, and you can see you've got direct questions or you've got sentence completions. Direct questions are WH questions, who, why, what, and then you've got your answers. Sentence completion, you've basically got half a sentence, and you've got to complete the sentence with the multiple choice options. And you can see that all these questions are multiple choice. You've got three choices, A, B, and C. You've got 90 seconds to look through your paper. That's not a lot of time. With 6 questions, that's 15 seconds per question. It's not a lot of time. This is where practice comes in handy. The more you practice, the faster you'll get. So you've got to use these 90 seconds wisely, put them to good use, read the questions carefully. You might want to underline words and highlight words to help focus your listening. And we're going to do a bit of practice today. And as you do this, what you notice with listening part C, I think one of the reasons why it's so challenging is because you're reading and you're listening. You're reading the question, you're trying to understand the answer options, but you're also listening at the same time. And it's really important that you don't stop listening. So it can be a tricky paper, I think, because you are trying to read and understand, what am I listening for? What's the question? What are they asking me? At the same time, you can't stop listening. Like I say, with practice, it does get easier. And we're going to be doing some practice today. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go through question by question. We're going to do 2 extracts. The first extract, we're just going to go through question by question. The second extract, we're going to do a whole paper. So with extract 1, you can see how you're going to listen to a speech therapist give a talk about stuttering. It always helps if you've got an interest in the topic. This is about speech therapy. It tells you it's a presentation as well. This is the first question. It says, what does the speaker say about people being disfluent? Okay, this is really what it's asking you, and that's what you've got to focus on. People being disfluent. What is the speaker saying about this? The speaker might say many things, but the question wants to know, what is the speaker saying about people who are disfluent? And also something I do, I always underline the verbs because it can change the question. Think about the difference between these two questions. What does the speaker say? What does the speaker suggest? Actually, they're slightly different, and it's the same in reading part C. You'll notice the verbs can change the question slightly. What does the speaker say about people being disfluent? Well, this is a little bit more direct. It's going to be more explicit. The speaker will say it in, they might not say it in an obvious way, but you'll be able to which tell what they're saying directly. What does the speaker suggest? Here, it's kind of inferred here. It's going to be implied. It's not as obvious. You're going to have to read between the lines, or if you like, listen between the lines. So really pay attention to the verb and really understand the question. If you don't understand the question, it's going to make it difficult to get the correct answer. Okay, so let's go back to the question. Here are the three answer options. A, they are often frustrated by the disruption in their speech. B, they become disfluent when trying to think. Or C, there's nothing extraordinary about them. So again, if I just do this here, we know we're listening to people being disfluent. That's really what we're going to focus on. And here, what I've done is I've taken out a lot of the small words, articles and prepositions and kind of the auxiliary verbs. I've left in the main verbs, the content words, we call them, nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And really, I've done that to help focus my listening. He's talking about people who are disfluent being frustrated when their speech is disrupted. B, I note something about disfluent when they're thinking. C, nothing extraordinary. So really just by doing that, it's helping me focus my listening. So it's something you might want to do in the exam. You might want to underline the verbs, nouns, and adjectives. And this is what we say are content words. You'll notice often frustrated, the word often is an adverb. And also trying to think, I've left in the preposition. And sometimes you might want to leave those words in because they can be important. But generally speaking, these content words, they can help focus your listening. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do question one. You'll have a little bit of time to read the question and answer options, and then it will go straight into the listening.
And they're trying to think of the correct words to use, they're trying to think of the correct grammar. And so you'll get lots of disruptions like ums, inappropriate pauses at times, or quite appropriate pauses while they formulate the language. That's a disruption to fluency that's perfectly normal. Age can sometimes disrupt fluency. Older people might take longer to find the right word, to be very precise about what they want. And so as people age, then their fluency becomes disrupted and often can frustrate their families enormously.
Okay, I hope you heard that. The mic was up. Hopefully you heard that as well. Let's just quickly look at the answers here. That was fairly tricky. Feel free to put in your answers into the chat. Again, these were the words that we highlighted. These were the things that we were focusing on. This is the tape script here. Just give you half a minute just to read the tape script. Okay, so like I say, feel free to type your answers into the chat here. I'm going to just focus on this thing here. Something when you have presentations, and it is hard to kind of follow the questions down, and often the questions are introduced. So when you know, when you hear something like this, when the speaker says, we know that people are disfluent, they're telling you which question you're on. This is question 1, so we know where we are anyway. It isn't too bad. But they've introduced the question here, okay, about people being disfluent. Here, this doesn't really say too much. They talk about people being disfluent when they're learning another language. And you can see here with option B, they're learning another language, they're trying to think. It does kind of direct you to question option B, but you've got to be really careful. Don't forget what the question actually asks you. So just because you hear something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the answer. If we keep going, here the speaker also says this, that's a disruption to fluency, that's perfectly normal. Okay. And then the speaker says this, talks about age, can disrupt fluency. Their fluency becomes disrupted and their families as well become frustrated. So, in fact, that sounds a little bit like option A, and you can see how ambiguous these questions are. In fact, all of these answer options are there, A, B, and C, but only one really fits the question. Okay. So yeah, like I said, this doesn't sound like option A, that you're often frustrated. Just because you hear it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the answer. The question was about people being disfluent. Option A, well, it didn't really fit because the speaker was talking about families, families becoming frustrated, not people. So actually it didn't fit if you thought it was option A. As we go down, here you'll see this was really important. The speaker said this, it's normal. And the disruption to fluency, well, it's perfectly normal, normal situations. That's really what the speaker was saying. It's actually perfectly normal to be disfluent. That was really her point. So the answer there was option C, but you've got to be really careful. Don't fall into the trap just because you hear something and you can see it on your question paper. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the answer. Really think about the question. Let's move on. Let's do question 2. Okay, you've got 15 seconds.
Now, the dimensions of fluency generally are considered to be rate of speech production, which is the speed at which somebody talks, ease of speech production, which is the effort somebody puts into speaking, and coordination or flow of speech. And stuttering can disrupt any of these dimensions. Stuttering can have an impact on speed of talking, because the more stuttering there is, the less somebody gets out. It can have an impact on effort of speech production. People who stutter often put a lot of effort into talking. It's effortful to get the words out. And certainly the continuity or flow of their speech is disrupted.
All right, guys, again, feel free to type your answers into the chat. That was a tricky question. Again, you've got to make sure you've understood the question. It asked you what point is made about the dimensions of fluency. Think about this, what general point is made? They're slightly different. What point could be any point, but a general point, it's got to be something general. So they're slightly different. Think about this question. Point made by the speaker. All of these questions are slightly different. So you've really got to understand the question. Because like I say, if you don't understand the question, then it's going to make it even more difficult to find the answer. So this is really talking about the dimensions of fluency, which is what I've highlighted here. You've got the three answer options. Again, if I take out a lot of the smaller words, the prepositions, and really you kind of get an idea, this is really what you want to focus your listening on. Dimensions of fluency affecting the effort made when you're speaking or being susceptible to disruption or negatively impacting your speech. Again, here's the tape script. I'll just give you half a minute just to quickly read through this. Okay, so like I say, I mean, you can keep typing your answers into the chat. You can see the question was introduced at the beginning. As soon as you hear the speaker talking about dimensions of fluency, you know you're on question number 2. So the question's been introduced. And I've just picked out some words here because that's what the speaker did. The speaker basically just defined dimensions of fluency, the rate of speech production, how quickly or slowly you speak, the ease of speech production, the coordination or flow of speech. That is the dimensions of fluency. There's nothing actually there in the answer options at the moment, but if we keep going, the speaker says stuttering can disrupt any of these dimensions. This is really important now. You can see here, it's actually the same thing as option B. So once you heard that, I mean, it's important to keep listening, keep listening, keep listening. But that was the answer right there in the middle. So this is the point that the speaker actually made. If you said option B, you're correct. Option C, negatively impacts speech production. In a way, the speaker did actually make this point as well, but it's a little bit too general. It's not suggested, it's not inferred, it's not implied. They wanted to know what point. It had to be direct, so it was something you should be able to pick out in the text. So it wasn't option C, but a few of you did say option C. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go on to question 3. Again, you've got 15 seconds to read the question and the answer option. Think about highlighting words just to help focus your listening.
Additionally, we have called overt features and covert features of stuttering. An overt feature is a feature of stuttering that you can see or hear. So if somebody is stuck, if they're blocking and they're frowning, or they're doing excessive eye blinking, you can see that, you can count that behaviour, you can measure that behaviour. That's an overt sign of stuttering. A covert feature of stuttering is really what we consider the person's reaction to stuttering. It's what they have to deal with that we don't hear. So it might be an increase in body tension. It might be anticipation. It might be frustration. It might be feelings of guilt, of anxiety, of despair, of embarrassment. Those sorts of things are what we call the covert or hidden features of stuttering.
Okay, guys. Again, another tricky question. The focus was really covert and overt. And then you've got a sentence completion here. You had to complete the sentence. When the answer options are fairly short, I kind of prefer it. It's easier to pick out words to focus on. In option A, we're focusing on the senses. On B, it's about them being different or dissimilar, as it says here. Or C, we can actually measure them. We can actually, in a way, we can judge them. We can count them, if you like. This is what the speaker said. Again, I'll just give you just to quickly skim read this. Okay, guys, so again, just feel free to put your answers or any questions into the chat. I wonder whether some of you did change your answers. You can see at the top here, again, the question is introduced. You know you've moved on from question 2, you're now on question 3. And the speaker, she just started to talk about overt features and defined what they are. She says it's something you can see or hear. She gave examples, talked about blocking and frowning, excessive eye blinking. And she says that these are things which are measurable. We can measure all of these things. With covert features, then she again just really defined it and gave examples, something you don't hear. Okay, it's an increase in body tension, anticipation, frustration, talks about guilt, anxiety and despair, embarrassment. And that's really what you had. When you go back to the words which are highlighted, you can see you don't have to understand every word to get the answer. Sometimes really when you're getting the gist of a text, you really just need to get the general idea of what the speaker is trying to say. Here, really focusing on some words, you can kind of see that these words are really leading you towards option B. The speaker isn't really talking about the senses. In fact, the speaker says that covert feature is something we don't hear. So it's not related to the senses. And you've got things like guilt, anxiety, despair. These are real emotions. Okay, and they're not both entirely measurable, which is option C, because only overt feature was measurable. So you're left with option B. It has to be option B. They're different in many different ways. Let's keep going, guys. We're going on to question 4. Once again, 15 seconds to read the question and the answer options and think about highlighting words in the answer options just to help you focus.
Now, someone who stutters can have their speech disrupted in a variety of ways. They might do repetitions, and repetitions can be of sounds, syllables, parts of words, whole words, or phrases. So you might get this sort of thing, or you'd get this sort of thing. A variety of repetitions. Blocking is another type of stuttering where the person knows exactly what they want to say, but they're unable to get anything out. So you might get this sort of thing happening where nothing comes out, and we call that blocking.
Okay, again, feel free to type your answers into the chat. The focus was all about blocking. You had a sentence completion here. You had to complete the sentence. You may have noticed all of these questions, all of the answer options started with verbs. 2 of the verbs were similar, show and demonstrate. So in a way, I kind of just ruled them out. This is really what I was focusing on, blocking being the speaker was contrasting it to repetitions or saying that they are different to speech disruption, or that speech disruption actually can occur even without anything being said. If you look at the tape script, I'm just going to show you, and again, just give you 30 seconds to quickly read through the tape script. Okay, so you can kind of see here, again, it's introduced, and in fact, it's not really introduced. I think this was harder, this question. If you were doing a whole exam, this isn't too bad. We're going question by question, but here it wasn't obviously introduced. So this is why it's so important to really focus and concentrate with your listening. There was nothing really too much about blocking. The speaker didn't say it immediately, but we had moved on from question 3. The speaker started off saying you can have your speech disrupted in lots of ways, and she talked about repetitions and just gave an example of what repetitions are. Then the speaker talked about blocking, and again just gave an example of what blocking is. Okay, when you go back to the answer options, well, I think these words here are quite important. In fact, that very first sentence, you can see it's actually an option B. Different ways, a variety of ways. Speech disrupted, and speech disrupted. It's the same, it's almost exactly the same. And also, I've highlighted here, blocking is another type of stuttering, and really that's what the speaker was doing, showing different ways that speech can actually be disrupted. Repetition was one example of that, and blocking was another example of that. She wasn't contrasting them or comparing them, and it was nothing about option C as well. Okay, guys, we're going to keep going. We're going to go on to question 5. We've got to keep moving. Again, you've got 15 seconds. Read the question carefully. Think about what they're asking you. Then think about focusing on words in the answer options.
Sounds can be elongated, and that's another aspect of stuttering behaviour. So sounds are prolonged or stretched out, and you might get this sort of thing where sounds are really stretched inappropriately. And it's a loss of control of the flow of speech. People can insert words, so you might get this sort of thing where or any other word is inserted to keep the flow. People can avoid words, substitute words, in an attempt to keep their speech moving.
Okay, again, feel free to put your answers into the chat. The focus was on elongated words. Why was the speaker talking about elongated sounds? You got your answer options if I do that to kind of helps me focus. A, about speech behavior being inappropriate. B, they can't control the fluency of their speech. Or C, about the flow being interrupted. This is the tape script. Okay, guys, I'll give you just half a second to quickly skim read this. Okay, so this time you can see the question was introduced. You know, if you're in an exam, that we've moved on from question 4 and you're now on question 5. So we're following this down. The speaker said something like this in the middle. She said it's a loss of control of the flow of speech. So she's directly actually telling you what elongated sounds are, a loss of control of the flow of speech. And you can see how it's been rephrased from option B. It's pretty much the same thing, inability to control fluency or a loss of the control of the flow of speech. It's actually almost identical, in fact. It's just been rephrased in a different way, and it's something else to be aware of. The language you see on your question paper is going to be different from the language that you hear in the audio. So you need to be aware of synonyms and synonymous language as well. Okay, guys, the last question 6. After this, we're going to do a whole extract, but let's do this one first. Again, 15 seconds, read the question carefully, and also read the question options carefully as well.
And not everybody who stutters has the same degree of impact. And it's important to note that a mild stutter, a low level of stuttering, can impact on somebody significantly to the point where they will avoid social situations. And people who have quite severe stutters might be outgoing and might say that the stutter doesn't make a great deal of difference to them. So the amount of stuttering is not always related to the impact of stuttering on the individual.
Okay, that was fairly tricky and fairly short, in fact. Let's have a look at the question. The main point. Okay, so we've kind of talked about how important it is to understand the question. It's not a general point or one point, but the main point. You can have a quick read of the tape script. Okay, guys, so again, moved on to question 6. The speaker just says, not everybody who stutters has the same degree of impact. Actually, it's quite an important sentence. We'll come back to that. She then talked about a mild stutter, and she was saying this could impact somebody significantly. Even though it's just a mild stutter, it could have a big effect on you. And then she talked about a severe stutter. And she said, actually, it might not have much of an effect on you. And that's really all that she was saying. The last sentence is also quite significant. The amount of stuttering is not always related to the impact of stuttering on the individual. Okay, and that really led you to, I think the first and the last sentences were quite important there. It affects people in different ways. Be careful, these questions are ambiguous. She did actually say option B, but she didn't say it was more difficult for people with a mild stutter. She was saying it could be difficult for people with a mild stutter. And also option C was slightly wrong as well. Outgoing people are more likely to be affected. Well, she didn't say it was more likely to be affected, so they may actually be unaffected, but not more likely. And really, just don't forget the question. The question is the main point. So even if you do hear B and C, even if they are correct, it's got to be the main point as well. It's tricky. These questions are ambiguous, especially when you're hearing all of these options, but only one of them is really going to answer the question. This is what we're going to do now, guys. We're going to go on to extract 2. We're going to do the whole listening and then look at it. Extract 2, it says here, you're going to listen to a talk by a doctor about industry-funded research. So we know it's a presentation and it's about industry-funded research. Okay, so what you're going to do, we can't get the whole question paper on the screen, so you're going to see two questions. You've got 30 seconds. You'll see questions 3 and 4. You've got 30 seconds. Then you'll see questions 5 and 6, and that's another 30 seconds. So you've got your 90 seconds to look through the paper. Really think about the questions. Make sure you understand the questions. Think about highlighting words in the answer options as well. Okay, good luck.
My name is Dr. Thomas Jones, and I've been campaigning for more transparency in industry-funded research and development. A lot of people ask me how I got so involved with this topic. Well, a few years ago, I began working with a data set that my research colleagues put together. It is an Excel spreadsheet listing all the money that drug companies were giving away to doctors and others for lunches, conferences, more lunches, and advisory services. It was a lot of money, millions of dollars, and this wasn't happening in some faraway place in a faraway time. This was happening now, here, in my own country. It didn't take a genius to work out that drug companies were not doing this because of their bleeding hearts. This was marketing. And as much as we might like to deny it, I began to suspect those companies knew that their money was affecting us. That was what compelled me to probe deeper into the matter. Still working with that data set, and learnt it's not just doctors that drug companies are paying, it's nurses and pharmacists and patient groups as well. I wondered what was going on with patient groups. I didn't know why drug companies would be giving so much money to patient groups, over $34 million in 4 years, but I was curious, and there wasn't much literature to read. I wanted to know why the patient groups came to be talking to drug companies, what they used the money for, and what they thought about the money, what they thought about the companies. I wanted to find out if all groups accepted money or just some, and what, if any, reciprocity was required. We also looked at industry-sponsored studies and how the results which overplays benefits and downplays harms. Let me give you an example. 2 French studies in 2005 and 2006 went to an ethics committee and got lists of all the studies they had approved, and then found out from the investigators whether the trials had produced positive or negative results before tracking down the publishers. The first study found that significant results were twice as likely to be published, the second that they were 4 times as likely to be published. The implications of this are severe. Firstly, both doctors and patients are being misled about the effects of medicine they use and can end up making decisions that can cause avoidable suffering or even death. We might also choose unnecessarily expensive treatments, having been misled into thinking they are more effective than cheaper, older drugs. This wastes money, ultimately depriving patients of other treatments, since funding for healthcare is never infinite. The big question is, what can be done about all of this? I believe in greater openness and transparency. At the moment, companies have the right to write into contracts gagging clauses, claiming that there is nothing wrong with these clauses. If companies, universities, legislators, academics, and universities think they are acceptable, then everything should be out in the open. That way, everyone outside those systems can see how research is being influenced.
Okay, guys, that was fairly tricky, and it was quite fast. You'll notice the speaker was actually speaking at a natural speed. When you listen to OET and with IELTS as well, the speaker, it is probably slightly a little bit slower than natural. So what you heard actually was someone speaking at a natural speed. So it may have been a little bit more difficult than doing an actual paper. And it's fairly short as well. But this is good training as well. In fact, the more difficult the training is, the easier the exam becomes. So sometimes when we do our papers as well, we do purposely make them difficult. If you did find that difficult, don't worry, we're going to have a look now. Any answers, feel free to type them into the chat. This was question 1. Thomas Jones got involved with industry-funded research because. So I highlighted these words, and in a way, what you could do, you can rephrase this question as a direct question, because what it's asking you is, why did he get involved in industry-funded research? That's really what it wants to know, and you might hear a lot of information, but this is really what you want to focus your listening on. The answer options that were here, these are 3 answer options. I'm going to narrow them down slightly. So option A, something about a data set and working on a data set with colleagues. Option B, about marketing, something about marketing methods. Option C, industry money, impacting doctors. You might want to narrow that down more, it's fine. And I'm just going to show you the tape script here. And just give you half a minute just to quickly skim read the tape script. Okay. Again, feel free, type your answers into the chat as well. I'm just going to highlight here, I began working with a data set. Sounds like option A, okay. Option A was about a data set, but it's really important that you do keep listening here. He explained what this data set was, a spreadsheet that listed lots of money and how drug companies were giving away money to doctors and other people as well. The speaker says that it was actually happening here in his country. And then he said drug companies, they weren't doing this because of their bleeding hearts. I think vocabulary is really important. I mean, of course, it's a listening test. You have to be able to listen well. What can help you is vocabulary, and having a really wide vocabulary it's a real advantage. And also with reading as well, with reading part C, the greater your vocabulary, in a way, the easier this is. Sometimes questions aren't too difficult, but they look difficult because the examiners have used some really difficult words. We've got something here, bleeding hearts, and really it's kind of like an idiom. It really just means to do something out of your goodness, you know, for your own generosity, or through your own generosity, because you're trying to be sympathetic. But it's a nice thing to do. But the speaker here was saying that drug companies weren't doing this out of generosity. Says this was marketing. They were doing this for marketing purposes. And at the end, the speaker says, that was what compelled me to probe deeper into the matter. In a way, this answers the question. And again, vocabulary is really important. That was what compelled me. In other words, that's what made me to investigate, to probe deeper into the matter. So this sentence is really important. In reading part C, you have reference words. And these are lexical questions. And to get the answer, often you need to go back. I think reading is probably easier than speaking, only because you can at least read the text again and again. With speaking, you've got one opportunity. You hear it once and it's gone. With reading, at least you can go back and read again and again. I wouldn't say it's easier, I'll take that back. I'll say it's just as difficult, but the advantage with reading is that you can at least read again and again. So here, if we do go back, what was the speaker talking about? Well, he says, I began to suspect those companies knew that their money was affecting us. Okay, here it says, wanted to know how industry money was impacting doctors. Okay, that's what he wanted to know. He began to suspect that. He wasn't sure. It's something that he actually wanted to find out. So the answer was option C. Really was tricky. Like I say, these questions are ambiguous. You got option A there, but it didn't answer the question. Talked about marketing as well, but again, it just didn't answer the question. Okay, we had question 2 as well. This is what it asked you, what interested him about the data set. So the focus is on interest, and that's really what you've got to pick out. These were the questions, these were the 3 answer options. And this is the tape script as well. Again, if you want to take half a minute just to quickly read the text. Okay, guys, let's have a look at this one then. Again, feel free to put your answers into the chat or any questions you may have. You can see the question, sorry, the question was introduced. Oh, you're on question 2 because they talk about this, specifically talk about the data set. So we know we're on question 2. This is kind of important. I wondered what was going on. Okay, so here you can see how it relates to the question. What interested him? Oh, he wanted to know what was going on here. We're going to come back. He went on and something else. I was curious. So again, you can see how this relates to the question. He was curious about something as well. So these words were actually quite important. What was he curious about? Well, he didn't know why drug companies would be giving so much money to patient groups. That's really kind of what interested him about the data set. And that actually was the answer. It was option A. Once you heard that, really that word, I was curious, I wondered what was going on. That really, they were big clues, in fact. Okay. I'm thinking about option B. It says groups besides doctors receive payments. Again, it's not what interested him. It was mentioned, but that's what I mean. Don't forget the question. So just because you've heard something in the text, it doesn't mean it's the answer. It wasn't what it's interested the speaker. So option B wasn't correct. Sorry, and option C as well talked about reciprocity. Reciprocating to give back, but it didn't interest him. So again, option C, it just didn't fit. You can see here, the speaker says, I wanted to find out if all groups accepted money. Okay, option C says all groups accepted payments, but we don't know that. The speaker wanted to find out if they accepted payments. So it's slightly different from option C, it doesn't fit. Okay, tricky questions. And this was also tricky, question 3. You had a sentence completion, you had to complete the sentence. The answers were short, and here's the paragraph. If you just quickly want to skip this. Okay, so this is really, really tricky. And I've kind of made, in a way, I've made your life harder in the exam, but I've combined two questions within a paragraph really to challenge your listening. And like I say, when you come and study with us here, the training that we do, we kind of really challenge you. If you make the training harder, the exam does become a little bit easier. So this is a really tricky question. In fact, here you can see it's been introduced, and you can see here the synonyms: commonly, often, oops, sorry, and not impartial, in other words, biased. Okay, so the answer was option B. It was really, really quick. You really had to focus and stay, you've really got to concentrate. The answer came really quickly with this question. So it was option B. With question 4, he believes the 2 French studies. These were the answer options. Make sure you do understand the question carefully. The 2 French studies, not one of them, but both of them. A, something about them being both flawed because they were biased. B, something, well, they had negative results and they showed negative results were published. That's what the industry would do. They'd only publish negative results. Just thinking about option B, again, just really, you've really got to focus and concentrate and think about how one word can change the meaning. Here, demonstrated that mostly negative results were published, or demonstrated that only negative results were published. You can see how this one word, the meaning is slightly different. And that's why you've really got to concentrate and focus when you're listening in part C. Again, here demonstrated that a few negative results were published. Again, it changes the meaning. All of these are very similar, but they have a slightly different meaning. So it's really important, as well as understanding the question, that you do understand the answer options. Let's go back to these options here, because we had option C as well. This was about the French studies showing that the pharmaceutical industry had a negative influence. This is a tape script. Again, guys, just quickly take 30 seconds to have a read of this. Well, the 2 French studies, you can see the speaker is talking about them here. And at the bottom, this is really important. The study found that significant results were twice as likely to be published. The second, that they were 4 times likely to be published. So they're only publishing information which is important, significant information here. Nothing about them both being biased. In fact, the speaker says that these were important results. So it can't be B as well, because B says negative results were published. It's actually the opposite. So option B was wrong. It has to be option C. It's showing the negative influence of the pharmaceutical industry. It's an interesting question because the speaker doesn't say that that these studies showed the negative influence of the pharmaceutical industry. So in a way, you're kind of inferring a little bit, you're reading between the lines. But also, you can use process of elimination. You can eliminate the answers that you know are wrong, in this case A and B, and it has to be C. Okay, let's keep going. We've got a couple more questions to look at. This was question number 5. Missing evidence affects the medical profession because it's a sentence completion here. You could rephrase this as a WH question if you like. Why does missing evidence affect the medical profession? These were the answer options you had. And if I take out the auxiliary verbs and the prepositions, that just really helps me focus my listening. A, something about impacting healthcare. B, we've got patient outcomes. And C, poorer choices being made by doctors. If you want a quick read of the tape script. Okay. You can still type your answers into the chat, feel free. I've taken out a lot of words here and just focusing on some words just to help me get the gist, the general idea of what the speaker was saying. Talked about doctors, patients being misled, about medicine. It affects the medicine they take. They make decisions, poor choices, which causes suffering, which is avoidable, or even death. And treatments they choose as well, and they've been misled, it wastes money, it deprives other patients of treatments as well. And it says here funding, it's never infinite. Again, vocabulary important. It means it's never, it does run out. It doesn't just go on and on and on. Showing that you don't need to understand every word to really get the general idea of a text or what the speaker is saying. Option A about impacting healthcare, actually you can see here that's not really what the speaker was saying. Remember the speaker was talking about missing evidence as well, how that affects the profession. Okay, so patient outcomes, yeah, it was all about patient outcomes. You make poor choices, it causes suffering, you know, you end up having expensive treatment. So it's all really about outcomes, not about doctors making poor choices. So there, it really helps you understood the whole text. It's difficult to get it from one kind of sentence there, but that's kind of what we call a gist, or getting the general idea of a text. Guys, we finally get to question number 6. This was question number 6. What can be done about industry-funded research? These are the 3 options you had. If I think about new clauses and contracts, something about companies not being involved in research, or something about contracts being made available to everyone. And this was the tape script. If you just quickly want to skim read this. So you can see it's introduced in the first sentence. So you know you've moved on from question 5. You're now on question number 6. This is what the speaker says: I believe in greater openness and transparency. So it's quite important, actually, these words. Got to keep listening. He talked about contracts, gagging clauses. Again, vocabulary. Gagging clauses means that doctors or companies, they can't speak. They're not allowed to talk about their contracts. Goes on and says that everything should be out in the open. Again, thinking about transparency, but the speaker things contracts. And then we can see really what's going on, and we can see how these pharmaceutical companies are influencing research. So when you look at the answer options, well, really not about contracts and new clauses into contracts. These shouldn't be in research, but actually said that these contracts should be out in the open, that they should be made available to everyone. So the answer is option C. Okay, guys, that's fairly tricky. Let's just do one vocabulary task. I'm going to show you some words, and what you've got to do is match the words from the listening to the synonyms. All of the words were key words in the listening, and something you want to do with OET is really just build up your vocabulary. So with this task, you've got a chance and opportunity just to kind of match words to synonyms. You've got a minute to do this. I'm just going to show you. So the words in blue on the left-hand side of your screen, these all came from the listening. They were all quite important words. You've got a minute to match them with their synonyms. The first word is susceptible. You can see you match it to vulnerable. Okay, some words have got more than one synonym. Guys, you've got a minute to do this. Okay, good luck. All right, let's see how you got on. I think that was fairly tricky, but actually it's not too bad. Just put you under a bit of pressure with the time. But the OET exam, it is about timing as well, and working under pressure. Anyway, we've got overt, measurable and noticeable, 2 words. Then got covert. Here, let's see, what do we have with covert? Covert, something covert is hidden, not known about, you're not aware of something. Impartial and unbiased. Okay. Elongated. These are talking about sounds of stuttering. Elongated basically basically means stretched. You make something longer. Bleeding heart. We also had this from the second extract, sympathy or generosity. Reciprocate, to give back or return in this instance. Nothing extraordinary. Okay, meaning nothing normal or ordinary, if you like. Okay, guys, so keep building up your vocabulary. It really will help you as you prepare for the exam. Just go over a couple of points then with listening part C. Make sure you understand the question. Really pay attention. Think about what are they asking you. Underline the verbs in the question. And like I said, if you don't really understand the question, then it makes it harder to get the answer. So make sure you do understand the question. If you want to underline words in the answer options, then please go ahead. It can help focus your listening, just so you know what you're listening out for. So think about highlighting words. Be aware of synonymous language. Remember, the language on your question paper is different from the language that comes from the audio. So be aware of these synonyms or synonymous language. Remember, the questions are ambiguous. So you might hear option A, B, and C in the text or in the audio. But that doesn't necessarily mean just because you hear something that it's the answer. The questions are really tricky, they're not clear, and you've just got to really focus and really concentrate. So don't fall into the trap. Just because you hear something, it doesn't mean it's the answer. Approach each question individually. So remember, you don't need to answer question 3 to get question 4. If you missed question 3, it's fine, it's gone, let it go. You can still get question 4. So each question is individual. Like I say, you've really got to focus and concentrate, and it's really important that you don't stop listening. I know it's difficult because sometimes you're trying to read the questions and you're trying to understand the answer options, but you mustn't stop listening. I think once you stop listening, it's really hard to pick up the listening again. So don't stop listening. You know, use the 90 seconds that you have at the beginning. Try and put those 90 seconds to good use as you go through the question paper. And finally, check your answers at the end. You've got a couple of minutes to check your answer options. in fact, to check your whole paper. So use that time as well to go through your paper and to check your answers. Okay, guys, there's also some links. I don't know if you'll find this, or some of you I know have actually already used these. These are podcasts, free podcasts in the BBC. There's some, if you click on this link here, it's sounds. You can just go to the BBC website, click on sounds at the top, and you'll see a whole load of free podcasts. There's three categories which you might find useful: health and well-being, science and nature, science and technology. It's just really useful to build up your listening skills. And remember, listening is a skill, just like playing the guitar or running or swimming. The more you do it, the better you become at it. So you want to practice your listening. So these podcasts are really useful, as are these. You've got in Australia, ABC podcasts. So it's nice, you can actually get different accents as well. In the OET exam, they do try to use different accents. It's an international exam. So you British accents, you've also got Australian and you've got American as well, and a few other accents. So ABC, this is from Australia. And again, you've got free podcasts on there about health. The Guardian, this is a newspaper in England. It's free. You can just go online. You can get podcasts. There's also stuff to read there as well, so you can improve your reading skills. And there's TED Talks as well at the bottom. So you can use TED Talks. You can also listen to TED Talks with just the audio. You can actually just turn the screen away and just really practice your listening. Okay, guys, so hopefully you found some useful stuff there. There's also stuff here at WLES.net. We've got a listening course as well. It's online, it's self-study with practice tests as well at the end of it. It's pretty much like the real exam. It's good stuff. There's 5 video lessons, so you watch lessons, you do tasks as well. There's also reading lessons as well online as well. There's speaking. There's all sorts of stuff actually. Just check us out, WLES.net. There's a lot of writing stuff there as well. Online, and of course there's face-to-face classes as well. There are packages as well. If you want something comprehensive, check out the Platinum package, which is what a lot of people do. Everything is there. But WLES.net, check us out. This is who we are. You can see I'm there on the left. Beth, some of you have worked with her before. In fact, Beth is teaching the 4-week course we got going at the moment. And there's Catalin as well, who's great. Hopefully you'll get a chance to work with Catalin at some point. She is an interlocutor as well here in London. So that's who we are. Check us out, WLES.net. If you are here in London, please just pop in, come in and see us, come and have a cup of tea with us. We're always happy to talk about OET. If you need some advice or just a little bit of guidance, then just come and get in touch with us. And we're always happy to talk about OET. WLES.net. That's it, guys. I hope you found some of this useful. It was lovely working with you. Apologies for the delay and the problems with the sound at the beginning, but hopefully you did find this useful. If you're taking your exam this weekend, I wish you all the best. Good luck. And in the future, like I said, if you need anything, check us out, WLES.net. Guys, stay safe wherever you are in the world, and all the best.